Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, so if you've ever written a line of SQL, you have definitely run into order by and group by. They sound almost the same and they both seem to, well, organize your data. But, and this is a big but, using one when you really need the other is one of those classic mistakes we all make. Today, we're going to clear up that confusion once and for all.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to kick things off with the absolute core difference between organizing and summarizing. Then we'll take a deep dive into each clause on its own. After that, we'll talk about filtering, solve a super common SQL mystery that drives everyone crazy, and then we'll wrap it all up with some powerful real-world examples. Let's dive right in.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it. The single biggest difference between these two commands, it's not about the syntax, it's really about your goal. It all boils down to the question you're trying to ask your data. That's the key.
I mean, this is the fundamental challenge of data analysis, right? You're just staring at this sea of data, millions and millions of rows, and your job is to find the story hidden inside. Well, order by and group by are the two main tools you're going to use to start making sense of all that chaos. And this analogy just hits the nail on the head. Think about it. With order by, you're basically a librarian. You're taking all the books you already have and just putting them in a specific order on the shelf. Alphabetical, maybe. The number of books never changes. But with group by, you're that candy sorting machine. You start with a huge pile of individual candies, and you end up with a few buckets. One for red, one for blue, one for green. You end up with fewer items, the buckets, that summarize the original pile. One is all about presentation. The other is about aggregation.
Okay, so let's start with our friendly librarian, order by. This is your absolute go-to for making the results of your query readable and, logical.
You should really think of order by as the very last thing you tell the database to do. It's like the finishing touch. After all the hard work of filtering and calculating is done, you just say, hey, before you show this to me, just sort it by this column, will you? By default, it goes from smallest to largest, or A to Z, but you can easily flip that around just by adding DESC for descending. Super simple.
So check this out. Here's a typical employee table. All the data's there, but the rows are in, well, some random order. If your boss asks, hey, who are our top 3 earners, you'd have to scan the whole list with your eyes. Not very efficient, right?
And boom, with one simple line, order by salary DESC, the whole table is instantly more useful. Steven, our top earner, is sitting right there at the top. Now, notice the important part. We still have all the same rows and all the same data. They're just in a much more helpful order. That's all order by does. It's a sorter, plain and simple.
Okay, now for the main event, group by. This is where we move past simple sorting and get into the world of real data analysis. We're not just rearranging rows anymore, we are fundamentally reshaping our results. So what group by does is it takes all the rows that have the same value in a column, say the same product category, and it squishes them all together into a single summary row. It literally changes the granularity of your data. Think of it like zooming out. You're going from individual sales to seeing daily or monthly totals. This is the engine behind almost all reporting in SQL. Okay, let's look at this table of books. The key thing to notice is that we have multiple rows for the fantasy genre. Right now, our data is at the individual book title level. And this is where the magic happens. Look at the result. Those 2 fantasy rows, they've been collapsed into one. But what happened to the quantities? Well, that's where our helper, the aggregate function sumQty, comes in. It added the 5 and the 3 together to give us a grand total of 8. We've actually lost the individual book titles, but in exchange, we answered a much bigger business question. How many books do we have in each genre? Now, these aggregate functions, they're like the essential sidekicks to group by. In fact, group by is pretty much useless without them. Group by creates the buckets, and these functions, like count, sum, or average, tell the database what calculation to do with all the items that fall into each bucket. So we've made our summary groups, that's great. But what if we don't care about all of them? What if we only want to see the genres where we have, say, more than 5 books in total? Well, that is a job for the having clause. This is one of the most important rules to burn into your brain, and believe me, it trips up everyone at first. Just think of it this way. Where happens before the grouping? It filters the individual rows, the raw data. Having happens after the grouping. It filters those final summary buckets based on the result of an aggregate function. So you where on a regular column, but you having on a sum of or a count of. And now for the big aha moment. Let's talk about the single most common, most frustrating error you are absolutely going to encounter when you start using group by.
Oh man, if you've written SQL for more than a day, you have seen this dreaded error. All it's really saying is that you've tried to select a column that isn't in your group by clause and isn't wrapped in an aggregate function. The database is basically confused. It's looking at a group of, say, 10 rows and asking, you want me to show you the value from this column, but which of the 10 rows should I pick? It has no idea. So when the database has no idea which row's value to show you, you've got three ways out of this mess. One, you can add that column to your group by clause, which just makes your groups more specific. Two, you can just remove that column from your select list entirely. Or three, you can tell the database how to summarize it, like by saying, just show me the max value from that column within the group.
And here is the secret reason why that error even happens. It's because SQL doesn't actually run in the order that you write it. Look at this logical processing order. The group by happens way before the select. So by the time the database even looks at your select list, the data has already been squished into groups. If you then ask for a column that wasn't part of that grouping or an aggregate, the database just throws its hands up in confusion. Understanding this logical order is the key to everything.
All right, enough theory. Let's put these powerful tools to work on some practical, real-world problems that I guarantee you're going to run into.
This is where group by gets really, really powerful. By just listing more than one column, you can create subgroups. So here, we're not just asking how many fantasy books, we're asking a much more detailed question. For each genre, how many books do we have in each language? This is how you start building truly detailed reports. And here's a super common, super useful trick. Grouping by just a part of a date, like the year or the month or even the day of the week. This is how you start to analyze trends over time. This is the foundation of almost all business intelligence reporting.
And let's end with a high-value takeaway, a little pro tip. This simple query is a classic data integrity check, and it is a very common technical interview question. All it does is group a table by some ID and then use having to find any of those IDs that show up more than once. Master this one, it'll come in handy.
So, in the end, it all comes down to this. Are you being the librarian, just neatly arranging your existing results with order by? Or are you being the analyst, completely transforming your data to find new insights with group by? Understanding that fundamental difference, that's the key to unlocking the real power of SQL. So the only question left is, what are you going to ask your data next?